Hello, I'm Jonasz Rewiński and you're watching Break the Fake. They make them, we break them, and tell you everything you need to know. So in the early hours of the morning on the 10th of September, Russia saw multiple drone attacks across several regions. According to the Russian Ministry of Defense, as many as 144 UAVs were destroyed or intercepted across the country. The mayor of Moscow, Sergei Sobyanin, has reported that some of the drones were downed over Moscow itself. One UAV, according to the locals, was destroyed near the Zhukovsky International Airport. As always, Ukrainian authorities did not offer any comment on the attack, but it seems Russia, while very fond of sending drones to kill and maim people abroad, doesn't really like getting the same treatment. Well, dear Russia, when life gives you lemons, get your troops out of Ukraine and you won't have to make lemonade. Now, the 81st Venice International Film Festival has drawn to a close. And of course, it would not be a major film festival without its own dose of controversy. This time around, the hubbub revolved around Russia's war in Ukraine. So, what was the whole thing about exactly, you may ask? Well, the answers are coming your way right now. The list of films screened at the Venice Festival included the documentary called Russians at War by Russian-Canadian director Anastasia Trofimova. Lots of claims were thrown around about how impartial and neutral the film was going to be, but hey, here is a fun fact about Anastasia. She's a former employee of, guess what? Yeah, Russia Today. Trofimova said she spent 7 months with a Russian battalion in eastern Ukraine and shot her film to, and I quote, challenge stereotypes. Oh, and by the way, she arrived in the war zone illegally. But, who cares? It is art. Trofimova freely admits that most Russian soldiers go to war to make money, that they are increasingly disillusioned, and that the coverage of the war in the state media is a lie. Some allegedly fight on the front line out of a sense of solidarity with their comrades, and they grow increasingly bitter and set in their aggressive stance as the death toll continues to rise. Reuters points out that the film shows only brief glimpses of actual combat and offers little, if any, insight into the destruction Russia is wreaking in Ukraine. One of the soldiers pictured in the film even outright dismisses accusations that the Russians have committed any war crimes. He says, "This is impossible, there were no war crimes." Yeah, sure, everyone's going to believe that. Trofimova also argued that she herself did not see any signs of war crimes during the time she spent at the front line. And why would she? It's obvious it was a Kremlin-controlled visit, as there is absolutely no way a quote-unquote independent journalist would be allowed to visit, let alone stay with Russian troops. So it seems we have another good Russian who is trying to convince the public opinion that the Russians are not inherently bad, it's just that they are forced to do bad things. Should anyone believe this, for your own good, you better not. And since we're on the subject of Russia today, let's get a brief look at Margarita Simonian and her response to the latest sanctions imposed by the United States on RT, the Moscow-sponsored television network, which we also refer to as Russia Today because we will not be swayed by a mere change of branding. It's Russia Today. You can RT us all the way you want. We know what the facts are. The sanctions are targeting several of its senior employees, including RT editor-in-chief Margarita Simonian herself. This latest package of sanctions was imposed in response to, and I quote, Moscow's attempts to influence the 2024 US presidential election, according to a statement from the US Treasury Department published in early September. So let us take a listen to Margarita Simonian and her response to the entire thing.
Помимо того, что введены санкции, двое наших ребят обвинены в отмывании денег, помимо попадания под санкции. Это серьезная история. Это очень серьезно.
А как
не
они
просто
отмывали?
я не знаю. Понять не имею. Понимаешь, это даже не коррупция, это отмывание
Отмывание, то есть
денег. То есть они
то есть
делают нас
микотор.
таким каким-то мафиозным кланом, конгломератом. Вы просто посмотрите, вот что они говорят. Я даже специально вот для себя здесь выписала. Медиа-королева Путина, значит, заявила чего-то там.
Вот,
Слушайте,
хорошо.
я вас хотя бы об этом попрошу, коллеги. Вы же смотрите меня все, потом переводите. Я сейчас к западникам обращаюсь. Не надо вот этого, пожалуйста, медиа-королева.
Нет
Потому
уж,
что
нет уж.
девочки, знаете, девочку легко испортить. Вот испортите, конечно. Я перестану, я вам поверю, перестану себя воспитывать, перестану сама себя ставить в угол, орать на себя перестану, пороть себя на конюшне перестану, растолстею, а Тиграну потом с этим жить. Поэтому давайте как-нибудь без вот этого обойдемся. Мы не короли и не королевы, у нас государство демократическое, мы все солдаты.
Oh, did someone not like being called Putin's propaganda queen by the foreign media? Well, how about something else? Russian clown? Too cliched. Bloody Margarita? Or maybe Margarita Putinian? Sounds better, doesn't it? And quite accurate. And now we're moving on to the Russian Foreign Ministry and the head honcho over there, Sergei Lavrov. What did he do this time, you may ask? Well, according to him, the majority of people in Ukraine supposedly consider Russians their brothers. Really? Even after almost 3 years of Russia's full-scale war and 10 years of festering conflict following the 2014 annexation of Crimea and the Russian occupation of Donetsk and Lugansk, he still thinks that anyone would still believe this lie.
Киевский режим, они уже давно все переименовывают, но тут уже у них проект, что даже копейку, вот, которая называется копейка, хотят переименовать, чтобы ничего не иметь общего с русским языком. Можно будет когда-то все это развернуть назад, то, что там сейчас творится.
То, что народ в своей массе нам брат, об этом не просто говорим мы это знаем. И те люди, которых Запад привел к власти путем антиконституционного государственного переворота, выполняют заказ Запада превратить страну в нацистскую угрозу, очередной раз нацистскую угрозу Российской Федерации. Это не получится, это уже всем понятно. Но судороги какие-то, агония, которые мы сейчас наблюдаем, в том числе в рамках так называемой Курской акции, они очевидны для всех, поэтому наше дело правое.
Tell you what, I don't know about Lavrov's family, but in mine, in yours, in anyone else's, brothers don't do really horrible things to each other's wives, they don't torture and murder each other's children, and, well, they don't kill each other. In Russia, family values must truly mean something else entirely. Something else than anywhere else in almost the whole world. Now, most of you know full well that our show deals primarily in ridiculous, over-the-top Russian propaganda, and some of the best clips we've featured here were made by the Russians, and they were supposed to show Ukrainian soldiers somewhere doing some stupid things, right? However, this next video truly takes the cake in this particular category.
Бабусь, да? Що вона скаже? Трудовителі прийшли. Гуманітарна допомога.
Какие вы освободители? Полдеревни расстреляли.
А як ще з Ростою поводитися?
Не нужно мне от вас ничего, сволочи.
Ручня йобана, їж.
Уходите, уходите, я уже столько насмотрелась.
Ну, дура стара. Все одно
Столько
всіх положимо.
натворили, сволочи. Мне терять нечего. Убирайтесь, забирайте все, уходите. Все равно победа будет за нами.
The only thing missing is horns and a tail on the quote-unquote Ukrainian soldiers, and maybe some soaring musical backdrop for when the babushka speaks. I mean, do we actually need to be proving this video is fake here? We hope at this point that everyone can see that this is all just a setup with acting talent rather than actual soldiers. It's the Russian propaganda machine in full swing trying to paint Ukrainian troops as occupiers. And with this, we end this episode of Break the Fake. Please stay with us here on TVP World for more latest news and updates.